The United States Senate has just confirmed Todd Blanche as U.S. Attorney General, America's top law enforcement official, in a razor-thin vote.
On this vote, the yeas are 50, the nays are 49. The nomination is confirmed.
Now, it probably comes as no surprise that Senate Democrats opposed Trump's pick for Attorney General. But Blanche also faced opposition from some Republican senators over his role in setting up a $1.8 billion fund to compensate what Trump administration sees as people unfairly targeted by the Justice Department. Blanche, who was already acting Attorney General before the vote, oversaw changes to the department's longstanding independence from the White House. Now, Trump and Blanche have a long history together. Blanche helped defend Trump in numerous court cases, both in New York and on the federal level, including his cases involving accusations of election obstruction, mishandling of classified documents, and supposed hush money payments. Now, some in Congress hope that the close relationship between the two men could help Blanche temper what they see as Trump's most concerning impulses. But others warn he is playing an instrumental role in reshaping and bending the department to Donald Trump's will. Here's a bit more of the debate that unfolded just before the vote.
We need a stabilizing force at the Department of Justice, and Mr. Blanche deserves the opportunity to provide that, as opposed to continuing to serve in an acting capacity and as the Deputy Attorney General.
He does not represent the American people now. He will never represent the American people. He will never do what's best for the American people. He will only do what's best for Donald Trump.
Some fiery words there. So what could Blanche's now permanent appointment mean for the U.S. Justice Department? Timothy Hagel, Associate Professor of Political Science at the University of Iowa in Iowa City, is here to help us unwrap this. So, Timothy, were you surprised at how close the vote to confirm Blanche as Attorney General was?
Not particularly. It was going to be close anyway, and once a couple of senators who had objected to the weaponization fund, that their concerns were resolved, it was still going to be close. And somebody like Susan Collins, senator from Maine, is in a close re-election fight, so it's not surprising that she would vote no on something like this to basically not give her opponent an additional talking point. Lisa Murkowski, senator from Alaska, has kind of an independent streak as well. And so it allowed them to basically cast no votes, either because they personally were against it or again with Collins in a close re-election fight, and still get the win. And even then, you know, if it had been 50-50, then we could have had the vice president's vote in favor.
Now, in the run-up to this vote, some critics say that Blanche represented a much more expansive view of presidential power than previous attorney generals. Could you help walk our viewers through what exactly that means?
Well, what it means in part is that the president, as we've seen with President Trump, but also Presidents Biden and Obama as well, that they're making liberal, shall we say, not liberal in the political sense, but expansive use of the executive powers, particularly executive orders. And because we've been in a situation for a number of years now where Congress has great difficulty getting much done, especially if it has any political overtones, and this is particularly regarding getting some things through the Senate, because of the filibuster, that basically the president has taken it upon himself to use his powers as much as possible to try to get things done regarding his policy. And again, this Obama was doing this, and Biden and Trump as well. So this is nothing new. And the difference with Blanche potentially is that he seems to be willing to allow the president to do that if he so chooses. Now, of course, prior administrations, you had Eric Holder, who declared himself to be the wingman of Obama, was perfectly willing to let Obama do his thing as well. So we're in kind of a period where there's the attorney general is often going to allow the president a little bit more leeway than perhaps has been the case in the past.
Now, Blanche had previously also said that this more expansive view was rooted in the Constitution. Last April, he argued that Trump had the right and duty to order political investigations under powers that were granted him in the Constitution. Now, does that argument have merit to you?
Well, yes and no. It's always going to depend on your point of view. That obviously Democrats, and you saw Senator Schiff was making that argument essentially in the clip you played, that basically he sees it as purely political. Well, from Trump's perspective, he sees that basically before when he was president the first time and then the intervening 4 years, that basically the Department of Justice was weaponized against him. And so basically this is looking into these sorts of things. Now, is that political weaponization? You know, if you're a Democrat, you may think so. If you're a Republican, perhaps not.
Now, previous presidents have kept more of a distance to the Justice Department, and we seem to be seeing that change under the second Trump administration. Do you think that is an important aspect of the American legal system, or is it more of an outdated principle?
Well, it's certainly something that we can aspire to and have aspired to in the past. We've often seen people that were nominated to be the attorney general that basically were somebody who had been a long time, perhaps members of the Department of Justice previously, even if maybe they had gone into private practice for a while. But basically, the idea would be that they would be looking at the law, you know, without partisanship and so forth. Unfortunately, we've kind of passed that to a certain extent. That we've seen again with previous administrations the last 10 or 15 years, where it's become more and more political. And that's one of the concerns that Trump had, was that the Department of Justice had become very political under initially Obama and then, of course, later Biden after Trump's first term. And so this is, in some sense, a carryover from that sort of a reaction saying, okay, well, it became very political one direction. Now we're making it political the other. That's not necessarily a good thing. It'd be nice to have it where it is a little bit more objective. It is looking at things more specifically without regard to the political side of things. But it's hard to argue that that's not something we've seen before.
Now, a lot has also been made of the close relationship between Trump and Blanche. And let's have a listen to a clip of Mr. Blanche that raised some eyebrows last month.
Are you and President Trump friends?
I'm his lawyer, was his lawyer, and now I'm the Deputy Attorney General. I met him.
Now, this may have just been a slip of the tongue, but for some people, it has been raising questions of a possible conflict of interest if he still kind of sees himself as Trump's lawyer. Now, is that something you would be worried about, or do you think it's much ado about nothing?
It's something that we would maybe be a little concerned about, and certainly Democrats are going to be keeping a close eye on this, but I think even Republicans would as well, that they would certainly be along the lines, they being Republicans, would certainly be along the line of wanting to see that the Justice Department is going to carry out its duties without undue political favor. Now, again, the Attorney General is a member of the President's cabinet and is going to adhere to the President's policies in various ways. And again, we've seen that in the past where, you know, maybe under the Biden administration, certain laws were enforced more faithfully than others. We think about immigration along those lines as something that Trump's administration has complained about. And so as long as Blanche is adhering to the letter of the law, is not unduly favoring Trump, he should be okay, even if it's more than obviously Democrats would prefer.
All right. Now, some senators have actually expressed hope that Blanche's close relationship with Trump and past history could help him tamper some of Trump's more expansionistic impulses. Have you seen any evidence of that when he was acting attorney general? And a question that just occurred to me recently was, how typical is it that informal considerations like those play a role in political appointments like this?
Those types of considerations can be important. And again, it does depend on that relationship. You'll notice, however, though, when Blanche was asked if he was a friend of Trump, he didn't say yes. And we say, well, I was his lawyer. Well, that's not necessarily the same thing as being your friend. That basically, if you have certain ethical obligations as a lawyer to adhere to the letter of the law, and even perhaps the spirit of the law. And so he can't go beyond that. And certainly we may not have seen much of willingness on his part to buck Trump's inclinations when he's acting attorney general, because if he does too much, then all of a sudden he's going to lose that opportunity. Well, now, once he gets confirmed, he could still be fired potentially by Trump. But once he gets confirmed, now he's got a little bit stronger base to work on. He can perhaps exert himself, if he so chooses, a little bit more to try to curb those inclinations. But on the other hand, we've seen that hasn't always worked in other cabinet positions. If Trump really wants to get something done, he's willing to, vocalize that, look, we need to do this and you need to get on the stick.
So Blanche has been confirmed now. What do you see as the key challenges moving forward for the Justice Department now that he has been confirmed as Attorney General?
Well, one of the things that any administrative political appointee, even at the very top level, has to deal with is that you're usually at the head of a very large bureaucracy, and bureaucracy often will resist changes of various sorts. And one of the things in particular that the Trump administration has tried to do is to change sort of the culture of the Justice Department, that it was sort of leaning too far to the left, again, from Trump's perspective. And so they want to try to rein that back a little bit, but that takes time and it takes a lot of energy. You're going to get pushback bureaucratically and so forth. I saw this when I worked at the Department of Justice for a couple of years, that a lot of the career people said, well, we can just wait out for the next president. Well, with Trump's case, he's only got a couple of years, and Blanche would only have a couple of years as his attorney general. And so they can wait and see, well, who's going to be the president come 2029 after the 2028 election. And maybe that would be something more to their liking. So they can sort of dig their heels in and resist any kinds of change.
All right, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. That was Timothy Hagel, Associate Professor for Political Science at the University of Iowa in Iowa City. Thanks for joining us and sharing your expertise with us.
My pleasure.
Now, we've heard from the expert, but what's your take? Is Blanche a good fit for the role of Attorney General? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you want to see more of our videos. Thanks for joining us.